Hello, and welcome to the Afterlife. I'm Dre.
I'm Luke.
What are we going to be talking about today, Luke?
The Hat Man, and a little bit. Well, are the Dark Watchers like considered shadow people as well?
Yeah, they're considered like shadow entities or Hat Man. I mean,
So, yeah, we're gonna talk about them a little bit, but it's mostly about the Hat Man. We have four facts, if you want to call them that, about the Hat Man. And then we have some Reddit stories that I kind of just like glanced over, but I saw a few good ones.
okay.
And there might even be some more now on that thread, but uh, without further ado, the first fact about the Hat Man. The Hat Man is often reported as a shadowy, solid black mass, wearing a trench coat and a hat, often a fedora. Uh, and I've also heard like top hats a lot.
hmm
Um, but in a lot of the depictions of Hat Man, it looks more like he's wearing like one of those like old uh, frontier type hats, like the Boss of the Plains hat, or
Yeah,
even a
yeah.
Gat styled hat, which I think is. I was looking at all these like hats on Wikipedia, and there's just like this long list of different hat styles, and I thought those two looked the closest to like what I see in the depictions of the Hat Man
Right,
online, like drawings of him and stuff.
right. It's the kind of descriptive kind of look.
Yeah, which there isn't much to go off of because it's just a black, uh, no real features that you can see, just darker than dark, a
hmm
shadow entity. And that kind of ties into fact two. The Hat Man is considered to be a shadow person. The body of a shadow person is usually perceived as being comprised of a type of blackness that has a sense of depth with few facial or bodily features. The blackness of their bodies often seem opaque, as if one is looking into a black hole in humanoid form. So it's almost like they're 2D. Um, or I would imagine it almost looks like they're 2D because there's like no real depth that you can see.
Yeah,
Almost
yeah,
like
yeah.
looking out at these trees, it's dark out and they're pretty far in the distance. And like in the day, you could see like the
Like the different
little
depth
leaves and
and
yeah, all the
yeah,
depth. But right now, it's just black, and it's like almost like if you've ever watched Bob Ross, like he's an oil painter, and he's like when he paints trees, like he starts with like a really dark color and then layers on
right.
top of that. But
Yeah,
without all those layers, it's just like two dimensional. Even though it's not, it like appears that way. I'd be
right.
interested what it would be like to like see the Hat Man, and it seems like he's always like facing you, like watching
Like
you.
right,
But
not
the
looking
Hat
away.
Man from the side, I wonder what that would
Right.
look like, or if people have seen him like turn and walk, and how trippy that would be. It must look like he's just 2D.
Yeah. Have you ever seen John Carpenter's The Fog?
I haven't.
So you have to see it. It's a really good movie. It takes place in a fictional coastal town in California. Um, I think it was actually filmed in Mendocino, California, if I'm not mistaken. There's like a curse like on the town and stuff, and so there's these like entities, like these dead, sailors basically, and That's kind of what they look like, because like you see them through the fog. They're really just these black silhouettes with like piercing red eyes.
Oh, yeah, which the Hat Man, he typically has red eyes.
Right. So that's kind of what I would imagine, what they would look like, because you can see them with like these like swords or hooks or something, but all you see is their silhouette. Like you don't really see anything other than that.
Which I also wonder what would happen if you like shined a flashlight at the Hat Man, and if it would be like the, I guess like with like a black hole where it just like the light just disappears.
Yeah, what I would kind of imagine would almost be like that horror movie trope, like there's some kind of like entity or ghost or something, and someone flicks on the light, and then all of a sudden, whatever they were looking at is gone, and then their flashlight starts dimming and dying. They're slapping the flashlight trying to get it to stay on. That's what I would imagine.
Dude, the fog, bro. I've heard well, we might have talked about this in the past, but like putting on your high beams in the fog actually makes it like harder to see, or there's
Oh,
something like
right.
that. That sounds like a pretty good setup for a movie. I'll have to check
Yeah,
that out.
yeah, I'll have to check it out.
And I wonder if it's actually inspired by shadow entities.
Well, I'm gonna get into that later, but it might be.
All right. Yeah, sick, dude. Well, okay, so the third fact on the Hat Man. The Hat Man is not always seen as a negative or evil entity, although many people report feeling fear, dread, or anxiety when encountering him. Some people believe that the Hat Man is a protector, a guardian, or a guide who may have a connection to their past lives or spiritual journey. So that's just kind of speculation on the Hat Man's personality, his
Mhm.
intentions, motivations.
And to me, I guess that would really depend, because I guess the question of the day is kind of, is the Hat Man one entity that several people all around the world see and have seen, or is the Hat Man, a coined name for any type of shadow entity that happens to be wearing a hat? Because
Right, yeah.
and I guess that would greatly impact whether the Hat Man is friendly or whether he's good or bad. You know, given the fact
Yeah.
that there's several of them, that just happen to be called Hat Man. Well, just like people, not everyone's, gonna be good or bad.
Yeah, maybe that the Hat Man is like anyone from like maybe it's like your great great grandpa is the Hat Man that you see, and then I see the Hat Man and it's like my great uncle or something, and like they're totally different entities. And maybe my great uncle is like a serial killer or something, and he's like trying to like uh I don't know,
Convert you.
steal my soul or something. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, or convert me
Yeah.
into
Do you
his
have some?
serial killer ways.
Do you have some like hidden family secret you want to share with me?
I don't even know if great uncle is like a legit thing. Like I think I
I
kind
mean,
of, is that a real thing?
yeah, because that would just be your great grandfather's brother. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it
Okay,
is a thing.
like family thing. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have a pretty big family, just like direct, pretty much. So when it comes to like extended family stuff, I'm not very clued in. But
Mhm.
I was gonna say something. I'll remember later, dude. So, oh yeah, here it is. So that's actually a common thing with aliens too, where people like speculate on whether they're neutral, evil, or they're like our guides or
Hmm.
protectors, or if they want the best. And it's like each alien could be an individual. There could be like multiple alien species, and it could be the same with the shadow entities. So, um, yeah, it's fun to speculate. I do wonder if there's if we'll run into any stories on Reddit, or if you know any stories of like a shadow entity being malicious, or the Hatman specifically being malicious. I haven't come across any, but that would be really interesting to hear about.
Yeah, definitely.
Because all the encounters I read about or hear about, it's like the Hatman kind of just is an observer more than anything. Um,
Right, he's just kind of in the background.
yeah, and then like he disappears. And, I don't know. I've never heard of him like interacting or talking with anyone, so it's so mysterious. But moving on to the last thing,
Hmm.
fact number 4. Um, while different civilizations around the world once had their own version of a sleep paralysis monster, Hatman seems to pop up in many different places. Even more intriguing, the description varies only slightly from one culture to another. He's sometimes 6 feet tall and other times 10. His eyes might be bright red or deep pools of darkness. Some people claim he carries a golden pocket watch or is mist like rather than a solid figure, but everybody insists he's wearing a trench coat like jacket and wearing a very noticeable hat. In most accounts, he's also eerily quiet. He doesn't touch you, try to attack you, or sit on your chest like other sleep paralysis demons are known to do. He often just stands in a corner of the room watching you. Sometimes he hovers over your chest, examining you closely. So, yeah, the last part was kind of like what I just talked about,
Hmm.
but it's now that they mention like the sleep paralysis monsters or entities or whatever you'd like to call them.
Hmm.
Uh, you told me about a story. I don't know if you want to share it, but
Yeah, yeah,
that
I'll
one
go ahead and
particular night where,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I can go ahead
I
and
think
dive
you're
into
like
that.
being strangled even.
Oh, well,
Um,
I mean, I've had a couple different like sort of sleep paralysis dreams throughout my life, but I remember like one of them, or a couple times, a recurring thing, I guess you could say, that has happened with them was I could really feel like I was able to sense someone standing in the room. And I know that sounds really weird, but the best way to describe it for me was, like when you close your eyes and maybe you're looking at the sun, laying on the beach or something. Well, you're gonna know if there's someone standing over you, because you can make out something through your eyelids, kind of blocking out your sun, you know, the silhouette maybe.
yeah, so like your light was on, or it was daytime outside, or
So it was actually nighttime. It's like, I don't know, if I had to guess, in the wee hours in the morning, I remember sleeping, and I don't know why, but I just had this strange feeling of someone standing over me. And I don't know why. I couldn't shake that feeling, but I was like asleep, if that makes sense. Because in my mind, I was just thinking, okay, it's one of my siblings. They're trying to prank me, they're trying to scare me or whatever. So I just kind of brushed it off and ignored it. And then I remember later on, all of a sudden I couldn't breathe. Like I just felt like my lungs were being like crushed or something. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't get any air, and I'd be gasping and trying to breathe. And I jump up out of well, not jump out of bed, but kind of sit up, and I can't breathe. And then after a while, I can finally breathe. I'm breathing like excessively and heavily, and I wake up. One of my siblings or my mom down the hall or something like that. And that was like little things like that would happen from time to time, or I would just have like weird dreams like that. And I would envision someone putting both hands, almost like they're going to do CPR, but both hands on my chest and then just leaning in. That's what I would envision in my head. It sounds really weird, but there's like pressing on me. Is when I was a baby. Obviously, I don't remember, so I can't really say how old I was, but maybe a year, probably no more than a year old. My parents were staying at my grandparents' house, and they're kind of staying like in this guest bedroom. And my grandparents' house is like it's a really old home. It's like about 100 years old. It was like built, and I want to say maybe 1920. Um, so the house is like really old, has a lot of history to it. And my mom said I was like sleeping like in the middle of the bed, like between my parents. And she kind of freaked out because she saw a silhouette of a guy standing in the room with like a big brim like fedora. And she was like freaking out. She couldn't breathe. She's gonna wake up my dad. And then he just stood there, and my memory's a little bit foggy, so I'd have to ask. But I remember for sure she said he was holding a small like wooden box in his hand, and he was just kind of like holding, not really presenting it, but just to my knowledge, is kind of holding it almost against his chest, like he's holding it, trying to show like this box. And then all of a sudden, I guess like he just kind of like that, he was gone. And then I don't really know what happened after that. I assume my mom probably, spent a couple hours trying to fall back asleep or something like that. But I know the next day, my grandma was cooking breakfast. Oh, I actually remember what happened before that. She was kind of like freaking out, like what just happened? Did that really happen? Was I dreaming? Weighing it out. And then my grandparents' bedroom was down the hall, and then she heard my grandpa say something along the lines of, "That damn ghost just grabbed my big toe," or something like that, or he grabbed my foot. Now, my grandparents' house, I can confirm it is haunted. Like I said, it's really old, has a lot of history. What happened there? I don't know. But it does have like a lot of like energy there, 100%. And then I believe my cousin had also mentioned she had seen like a guy like in a hat in that same room. So I
Whoa.
don't know if you could, I don't know if in this case you could really consider that was the Hat Man. Was that a Hat Man, or was it just a ghost of a guy that happened to be wearing a fedora and was holding a little box for some reason? What's in the box? Who knows? But
Yeah,
um,
very odd how he had the box. And was it like the size of like a cigar box? Was it like a pretty big box or
so from
people?
what I know, I believe probably about the size of a cigar box, like a little wooden trinket box, like something like that.
Interesting.
So, but yeah, the house is like really old. So who knows, like, what happened there? Who knows what happened there before the house was built? If there's a house already on that property that was torn down or whatever, was it just open field? Who knows? So, yeah, that was just kind of like my encounters, if you will, like with hat entities or shadow entities. And speaking of shadow entities, we mentioned them earlier. There's what's known as the Dark Watchers. And have you ever heard of the Dark Watchers? I mean, other than what we talked about the other day.
No, so I'll be I'll yeah, I'm pretty much just like the little details you filled me in on.
Okay.
that from the other day, or I think that might have even been last night. We were
Yeah,
talking
that's right.
about him.
Well, so the Dark Watchers, they have been known, people have been known to see these entities called the Dark Watchers, and they're basically like hat men that people see. And they're kind of seen in the Santa Lucia mountain range. Are you familiar with John Steinbeck?
Uh, well, I'm really bad with names. What's this guy about?
So he was
Like,
like an
how do you say
author.
his last name?
Yeah, he was an author.
Oh,
Um, he wrote a lot of books. I think he wrote Tortilla Flat, like a lot of short stories, kind of like Ernest Hemingway. I think they were like, around the same time. I'm sure my history teachers are probably cringing right now that I don't remember, but he actually had a book called Flight, if I'm not mistaken. And from what I know, he actually had encountered one of these Dark Watchers, and he had
well,
actually written about them in his book.
of
And I don't have.
Ben is one that I've heard of. I'm looking through like
Oh,
his.
that's right, of Mice and Men. That I couldn't remember what else he
Yeah,
said.
and
Yeah, of
it's
Mice and Men.
saying he's from yeah, like Central California region.
Yeah, so it's like only
Valley.
natural that. Yeah, so I mean, and I guess this really goes back to like, folklore and tradition and stuff, because I mean, stories go back as far as the Spanish like settlers back in the 18th century. Like they had seen these entities in the mountain ranges. And as far as like appearance, it's really the exact same thing. They're just known as being like really slender, sometimes being up to like 10 feet tall, piercing glowing eyes, wide brim hats, and dark cloaks, which is a little bit different than the trench coat. I mean, but the way I'm thinking of it is if it's all like one shape, there's really no dimension, kind of like we were saying if they're two-dimensional, if you think of it in that sense.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'd really be able to tell the difference between a cloak and a trench coat, if you're not really making out the shape, unless you can really tell a distinction in the sleeves or something. So that's like the only kind of thing that's a little bit different. Now, I really haven't heard anybody saying that they're different from the Hat Men. I really haven't heard anybody saying that they are, oh yeah, that those are the Hat Men or whatever. Um, so that's just kind of like what I know. I believe also John Steinbeck's wife, she also had encounters with the Hat Men, and if I'm not mistaken, there's an old story of her having like some flowers, and she would kind of offer those to the Hat Men, and wherever she would put them, maybe like on the side of the road or on a little trail or something, she would receive flowers back. And I don't know if it was like different flowers or flowers that only grew up in the mountain range. I don't know about any details like that, but I had heard about that they would kind of like exchange flowers and gifts and stuff. And again, like with the Hat Man, um, there's really nothing that says that they're either good nor bad entities. It's just kind of like just like what you're saying with the Hat Man. It's like they're just there, they're being observant, and some people believe that they were there to guide you while you're on your travels. Because a lot of people said while they're traveling through that mountain range, they'd kind of see them off in the distance, just kind of like observing them, just kind of watching them, seeing what they're doing.
yeah. I'm wondering how they would guide you though? Like, because I feel like most people's reaction would like not be to follow them or like go near them. Or maybe that's the point. Maybe they're like, oh, if I stand here, they're gonna like go in the opposite direction, which is where they should go. Cause over where I am, there's like a bear or something like that. Uh,
Right.
but yeah, and who knows? It's fun to speculate, but there's like so little info on them. The flower
Yeah.
thing, though, does make them seem like nice.
And
It's pretty
yeah.
cool that they did that.
And what that reminds me of, I believe it's in Frankenstein. I'm trying to remember. I think it's the first one, from the 30s. Yeah, it's the first movie. Um, I don't know if you've seen that one or not, but there's this one scene where, because we always like see like Frankenstein being like really violent and outlandish. It's like this brute force, right? Being tormented, by flames and stuff, right? So he's just like
Yeah.
almost like an animal at that point, just like really violent. Well, there's one scene where he's actually playing with a little girl, and they're taking flowers, and she's picking them and throwing them like in this like little lake, and she shows him, and he does the same, and that's almost like what it reminds me of, because it's almost like childlike in a way. It kind of echoes back to like that scene. It's like, who knows? Maybe they could be, you know, almost like a bad omen. But then again, maybe they also have this sort of um, childlike side to them, where they're not all bad. Who knows? Again, I think that really echoes back to if they are several entities that just have the same or similar look, or is it one individual, one Hat Man? Because that would really determine whether is the Hat Man good, is the Hat Man bad? Just like people. I mean, if there's 100 different people, all looking the same or donning a similar costume, well, they're all gonna act, slightly different. Maybe, maybe out of like those 100, maybe like 10 of them will be like bad. Maybe another 20 will be like borderline. So I don't know. I don't know the actual statistic. I'm just kind of like trying to make some sense in my head, but I don't know. I think it really depends on if the Hat Man's just one entity or if there's like several.
Or maybe it depends on. So, have you heard how people like see him or them when they take like a large amount of, I think it's benzos?
Oh, Benadryl?
Yeah, I believe
No,
so.
I haven't heard about that, but
Maybe I don't know if Benadryl is like the same as uh, benzos or what it is, but I did hear that like if you take large doses of it, you'll see the Hat Man. It was like I don't know if it was like a TikTok trend or what, but I wouldn't be surprised. That kind of sounds about right. But I'm like wondering, like, what if you like kind of, you might be getting another Hat Man, or maybe the same Hat Man when you do that, but you're summoning him almost.
almost like Freddy
It's
Krueger
more
or something.
malicious. Yeah, whereas if you're just living your life and you happen to see him, uh, then that's how it goes.
I remember when I was a kid, there was like a trend going on. I think this is even before Instagram, would be very early days of Instagram. It's mostly like a trend going on Facebook, I think, where people were taking like large doses of Benadryl, and that would give you like sort of like a hallucinogenic kind of high. But to my understanding, it was like a very like nightmarish kind of like hallucination,
Mhm.
almost like the Scarecrow, like in Batman when he has like that his fear gas,
Yeah,
almost like that. So
yeah. I've heard they're really bad, yeah. Um, but oddly enough, I've heard the Hat Man pops up. I don't know if it was Benadryl or benzos or if they're the same thing, but
yeah, I'm not sure.
pretty spooky. Maybe it's like, I don't know. It's hard to say what he is. And like, is it a ghost? Is it like a soul that's in purgatory? And maybe they're not even aware that you can see them at times and they just pop into existence sometimes for whatever reason. Maybe they're like interdimensional. Uh, I bet there's like other theories on him too, but there seems to not be a lot to go off of.
Right.
Um, Besides like secondhand accounts and stuff. But uh, was that everything? I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover
Yeah, I was gonna
before
say
moving
that
on to the
being
Reddit story
yeah.
things. All right, sure. So I'll open up the thread here. It's titled, "Has anyone else had encounters with the Hat Man?" This is on the subreddit Paranormal Encounters, and this OP is Purple Supernova, and this was posted 50 days ago from this date. As long as I can remember, I've seen an abnormally tall, thin shadow person wearing a top hat. I've seen him inside my house, outside at school, and even at other people's houses. Sightings include seeing him briefly peeping out from behind trees or buildings, outside in broad daylight. Oh, that's pretty eerie. And a couple times while using the restroom at school. I've only seen his feet standing outside the closed stall door. Even in the light, he has no features, just pure darkness. Like a black paper cut, like a black paper cutout in the shape of a person. I mostly see him inside, though he sometimes stands behind my bedroom door and sometimes paces up and down the hallway by night. Several times while passing a mirror or other reflective surface, I can just barely catch a glimpse of him following closely behind me in my reflection. But when I spin around, no one is there. This isn't an everyday thing, just often enough that I can't discount it as something in my eye or catching something completely normal in my peripheral vision. And another thing is I'm not the least bit frightened of him. He doesn't have a threatening aura at all. It's more a sense of curiosity, maybe. I've read up some on the phenomena others seeing the Hat Man, and many describe a dreadful feeling when they see him. Yeah, I'd like to see some of those. I've never felt that not. Well, I think one of the stories in here, someone did feel that way. We'll see. I've never felt that not even as a child. I was just wondering how widespread encounters are with this entity or whatever it is. Edit, I forgot to add that it has followed me to several houses whenever I've moved. I'm an adult now and I've seen him here, but no one else in my family has ever seen him except me. I've decided to list some of the instances where I've seen him. This is by no means a complete list, just a few that I can remember off the top of my head. I clearly remember him standing against the wall behind the door in my bedroom at night. From the time I was still in a toddler bed, he would just watch me, and sometimes he would walk out the door, up the hallway, and be gone. Other times I would fall asleep while he was still standing there. I saw him outside many times as a child. I recall playing with my dog, throwing a ball towards the woods that lined our backyard, and as I watched my dog run for the ball, I would see him standing at the very edge of the trees. Another instance, I was playing in my wading pool with a friend about 5, 6 years in age, and saw just his upper body poking around the side of my house watching me. I don't get how people experience this and aren't deeply disturbed, by the way. Uh,
I mean,
that's pretty terrifying. But you are a little kid, and if it's like normalized, like he's literally just standing there in your room with you, I guess it isn't as scary. It's just scary
yeah.
to me because I've never experienced it. Uh, but anyways, he has a few more encounters here. I saw him at my elementary school while on the swing set during recess. Again, just his upper body peering around the side of a tree. Twice I remember using the restroom at school and seeing just his feet underneath the stall door, as if it was someone waiting for me to finish. I never heard anyone come in, and he wasn't there when I opened the door. I saw him at my friend's house, standing in her doorway watching us play with dolls. Once I came out of the bathroom at my grandmother's house, and he was standing at the end of the hall. I saw him in mirrors a lot too. Uh, I've been laying in my bed reading a book and see him walk by the open bedroom door, and a few times I've come out of the bedroom and seen him standing in my daughter's room across the hall. I specifically remember one time when I thought my daughter saw him too, but she was too young to talk. I had her in the bathtub and had half turned to reach the baby shampoo behind me. I saw him out of the corner of my eye, and when I fully turned to face him, he slowly backed out of the room, without making a sound, and almost as if he was gliding, not walking. This was in the middle of the day under a bright bathroom light. My daughter's eyes followed him as well. There are many more occurrences, but this list is long enough already. He's not scary at all, and he's never tried to interact with me or touch me. This is not sleep paralysis. I was fully awake and engaging with other people during some of these instances. So I wonder, like, like she's, or he, I don't think they say whether they're, anyways, they were like saying they saw them when they were playing with dolls with their, I'm guessing it's a girl, and with her friend, and
Right.
I wonder, like, if she reacted or told her friend, like, or asked her friend, like, hey, did you see that? Uh, just wondering, like, why out of all these times, only possibly when her daughter was, like, really young, another person saw the Hat Man as well. But I think there's stories in here, if I recall, where multiple people all see the Hat
Mm-hmm.
Man,
Like
and
in
it's
one
not like just
experience.
one person. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's like kind of harder to just, because like this, you could be like, oh, maybe she's schizophrenic or something, or I
Yeah.
don't know, but uh,
When,
it seems pretty believable to me.
yeah, I mean, I
What are
can't,
your
like,
whole thoughts on that?
so, I mean, like, kind of like what
Right.
you're saying, like, when you said that, if this person had seen them since they were like a kid, it's like you said, it's almost like normalized. So I think if you were an adult and then this all started happening all at once, say like, didn't happen until like you're in your 20s, then I think that would be like really terrifying. But again, if this happened from the time you're a kid, you know, this is a little more like normalized. I can't really um say I relate to seeing like the Hat Man and stuff like on a regular basis because I don't, and I've actually never seen like a quote unquote Hat Man as much as I've seen kind of like shadow stuff. Um, and again, usually that's just kind of like a weird, almost like a running shadow. Now, when you mentioned in this in the thread about when they said they would kind of see him from like the peering around a corner, I would kind of see like stuff like that from time to time. I remember um at my house, like at the top of the stairs when I'd be walking past the staircase, I would kind of see someone in a position like they had one foot on like maybe the second or third step, standing at the bottom of the stairs, and they had both hands on the rails, almost like they were trying, like struggling to walk up the stairs. But again, it's kind of like a thin silhouette, and that would kind of like creep me out, especially like when I was like in my mid, early to mid teens. But I never really mentioned it. It's not even because like I was afraid of like people not believing me or whatever. Honestly, it's for me, it was like it would happen so quickly that I would kind of forget in that instance. And I know it sounds really weird, especially if there's like something that crazy, happening. But I don't know, like for me, I can't speak for this person, but when I would see stuff like that, I would almost like forget as it happens. Almost like if, you're walking in the park and then you happen to see, you know, a leaf fall from a tree and, hit the sidewalk in front of you. You'll take note of it, I'm sure, but, you're not gonna go around telling people because, you're gonna see hundreds of other leaves falling, while you're in the park, right? Because it's kind of like
Yeah,
normalized.
it's
It's like
literally,
you,
yeah, like they name so many different instances. Not
exactly,
not to the point where like it's as normal as a leaf falling or whatever, but I can definitely imagine them like not even mentioning it. And I don't think they, yeah, it seems they don't talk about that. Like if they've talked about people or talked about their experiences with people in real life, because it also might be that like she doesn't want to seem crazy to people, and that could be why she's making like a Reddit post. Um,
right.
but anyways, there's this next story. Person, uh, dad's going to prison. That's his username.
Oh, I thought
When
that
I
was the
was,
story.
or her username, when I was pregnant with my first baby, we lived out in the country, and the closest neighbor was 3 miles away. I used to see a man outside about 100 feet from my house, just staring. I saw him regularly. He was just a black shadow man, but he was solid. He had on a hat and a long coat, like a western duster coat. He would just stand there and stare. I saw him outside of different windows. I felt like he wanted to take my baby, like make me lose the baby or kill him after he was born. It terrified me. After I had my baby, I never saw him again. Um, so this is, yeah, that's what yeah, I thought I remembered seeing someone like say they were scared of him. Um, but to me, just because he like disappeared after the baby was born, I don't know if she was like correct about that assessment. Or maybe she was because he disappeared. But with the like wanting to kill the baby after it was born and all that, I mean, I would probably end up doing that too. Like just start thinking of the worst case scenario immediately.
Right.
But a lot of people are like saying like, oh, it was probably like he was like watching over you and like making sure you were okay and stuff. But maybe he did have malicious intent. But after seeing the baby born, he was like, and moms can just be really protective. So I'm sure
Right.
that's a big factor of it. But what if he was malicious and after the baby was born, he was like, well, I guess I didn't succeed, and that's why she never saw him again. Um, so what are your thoughts on that story?
Um, I don't know. I mean, it was kind of short. Um,
Yeah,
but that's almost kind of similar to, I guess, what happened to me, or I guess actually my mom, really. Um, at my grandparents' house. I mean, I guess you could consider that my first paranormal experience, although, like, to my knowledge, he didn't interact with me. Um, but just kind of like this, like, I remember my mom being kind of freaked out because I think she thought, like, someone broke in the house or whatever. And of course, like, I'm there, I'm like a little baby. Again, I don't think I was, like, older than a year. Um, so, yeah, I can totally understand being, like, really scared in that situation. So
yeah,
that's
and
kind
that's
of,
like if you're out in the country, a
and
hundred. Here's how I think about it. Like, if even though he was like out in the field, 100 feet away, like that might feel like the equivalent of having the Hat Man in the room with you in a crowded city, like in your mom's situation. Because like I guess she wasn't able to breathe, but like if you were to scream, like all your neighbors would hear you. You have like more of a sense of safety. But if you're like out in the country, and maybe she was even alone, because like her username is Dad's Going to Prison. So like
yeah,
if
who
she was
knows?
like out alone in the country and like no one can hear you, it's 3 miles to your closest neighbor. So
That's a good
yeah, I
point, and
understand why
I didn't.
both were pretty terrified.
Yeah, I didn't even consider that. So that's a good point. I mean, uh, Dad's going to prison. If you can confirm, if you're watching this video, let us know. Were you alone?
Yeah, hop on the
Um,
pod.
yeah. All right. Well, did you have any other stories you wanted to read? Because I think
Yeah,
we're
so
just about time.
oh yeah, shoot, what is the time? I might do one more and then we could wrap it up because we're at an hour. That's wild, dude.
Yeah.
It's been a really cool one. Um, so this one, it's also pretty short. By Eskimo Sound. OP, do you see him out of the corner of your eye or is he full in front of you? I lived in a house where something darted from room to room, a dark figure, but always out of the corner of my eye. Eventually, and I mean 30 years of seeing this, I opened the door and the figure was there in front of me. I jumped and screeched, and the figure jumped and pushed itself into the corner to get away from me. We stared at each other for about 15 seconds, and the figure slowly vanished. Yeah, that's a lot like what happened with your mom, I feel like. That was the last time I ever saw the figure. It showed no malice and seemed to never want to encounter me. It was just doing its thing and wanted nothing to do with me, but it wasn't a man in a top hat, so just a shadow entity.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I don't know if that one qualifies as a hat man, but either way, I think that would be really terrifying. Just to
Yeah,
be like
dude.
at a standstill, you're having like a standoff, just staring each other down for a minute. And
Man, that would be spooky. Uh,
All right.
There's some pretty juicy stories in here, but we are pretty deep into the podcast now, and we can always revisit the Hat Man, especially if this video does well. So if you guys like it, just be sure to hit that like button and leave a comment, and we'll retouch on it.
Well, as always, thanks guys for tuning in to this week's episode of The Afterlife. Please like and subscribe, and if you've had any encounters with paranormal, if you have any encounters with the Hat Man, Bigfoot, ghosts, really any sort of paranormal entity whatsoever, let us know. You can find our contact info in the description of this video as well. You can always leave a comment down below. Until next time, I've been Dre.
And I'm Luke.
And we'll see you on the other side.